Hello everyone, my name is DEDMan Gaming, and today I'm presenting to you my very first Game of the Year rankings. So I did a similar one, where I ranked all of the games that I had played through the year, but they were like backlog games. They weren't stuff that just came out this year. And I also use ranking loosely because some of those are better than others in certain points, but I just kind of rated them where I rated them, mostly on how much fun I had, and some of them I rated lower because I'd already played them before. But anyway, that is about that video, and this is about this video. So I'm going to rank each game that I played this year, and these will actually be concrete rankings of how I feel about these games. So, without further rambling, let's get into it. This War of Mine, the Final Cut. So for this one, the only reason that it's actually ranked low is because it is the exact same thing, the exact same release as well, not the exact same release that was on PS4, but this is the Final Cut, the definitive edition of it that is on PS5. I love this War of Mine very dearly, and honestly, if it wasn't for the fact that it was a re-release, and something that I had not played prior, I would have put it much higher on the list. But as it is still a fantastic game, and I'm mostly just putting it at the bottom because it is, for all intents and purposes, a re-release. But I still love it, still emotionally devastating, still would heavily recommend playing it. The Somnium Files Nirvana Initiative was a pretty good game. I mean, I had a fun time with it, but I don't know if it is because the idea of like the weird, almost supernatural stuff, I don't know if it just doesn't hit as well in this one as it did in its predecessor. I didn't care for it as much as I liked the original. I feel like the twist was kind of weak in comparison, and just, it could have been done better. Honestly, I liked it. I really liked playing it. I had a blast with it, even though the circumstances around me getting it and then it being a couple of weeks before I was actually able to play the game, and I'm gonna be honest, I have actually been stalling on making everything great about the script is mostly done. I just, for whatever reason, can't bring myself to finish it. I think I just got like a little bit burnout or something on it. I'm not sure. It is coming. It's going to come after all of the Dead Space stuff. But I don't know. There was just something about it that I couldn't really get all that into compared to the original. It's still a very great game. I would still recommend it, but for me it was just kind of compared to the original. Ghostwire Tokyo was not really disappointing, but it wasn't as like good as I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be one of those things where I was basically scared out of my pants the whole game. It is definitely creepy, but there weren't any outright scary moments, and I think that might have been the marketing for it. I couldn't quite tell you. But it was a very fun open world first-person supernatural shooter, which is definitely something new. I didn't like some of the twists and revelations that were within it. It's not so much that I didn't like them, they just fell kind of flat. But overall, I do think it's a good story. It is a good, like, processing power showcase for the PS5, in my opinion. And the little introductory comic that came before it wasn't too bad either. It gave you a little bit of insight into KK and just a little bit of information about him. But it was a pretty decent game. I had a fun time with it. I have said a lot about Bayonetta 3 in my Everything Great About video. I don't really know what else more I have to say about it. It was disappointing in the way that it was written. It doesn't feel like there was enough care put into Bayonetta, and as I talked about in great length in my Everything Great About video, she is one of my favorite characters in all of gaming because she is badass, she is strong, she is a good representation of females in gaming, in my opinion, as a man, so whatever that is actually worth. But I liked her portrayal in the first two games, and this version doesn't do a whole lot for me. Now, granted, there is the whole she's from an alternate timeline, so she's not the same Bayonetta that we know and love, but they kind of threw that in at the last minute. There wasn't enough time to... And there wasn't even really anything in the prior games to lead up to this. It was assumed at that point that they were the same Bayonetta, and there's references between all three of them, and it's bad writing. I don't like to be the negative guy, but it is bad writing the way that it was done. Honestly, if the gameplay wasn't as good, this would be probably at the bottom of the list, because I do like the story of Bayonetta 1 and 2. The third one, I like the particular elements of it. I do not like how it was executed, and to me it feels like a disservice to the fans of Bayonetta. I've got my fingers crossed, hoping that the next Bayonetta, the prequel one, Bayonetta Origins, I'm hoping that it is good. I just hope the prequel is good, because Bayonetta 3 kind of got my faith down in the character. And I'm hoping that Origins can bring it back, because I don't want to think of Bayonetta in the way that she was in 3, to be perfectly honest. The Callisto Protocol. Following up one disappointing game with another. Callisto Protocol is made by the people who made Dead Space, so the elements are there for it to be a good game. Sorry, not that it's a bad game, but it is disappointing in the presentation, knowing what their previous work was. If this was some nobody just coming into the gaming industry, somebody who this was their first game, and for a lot of people I'm sure it was, but for Glenn Schofield to make something like Dead Space, which has held up for over a decade as still a really great game to play even to this day, for the Callisto Protocol to be presented in the way that it was disappointing. Now, I do like the Callisto Protocol as it is, as it's presented by itself, but as the quote-unquote spiritual successor to Dead Space, it is very disappointing, and I hope the story DLC not fixes some of these problems, but at least addresses them, and I'm hoping that it doesn't flop so hard that they can't make a sequel and maybe bring themselves back, because it was fun. I am looking forward to learning more about the biophage and what all's going to go on with it, but as it's presented right now, as a hardcore Dead Space fan, it is very disappointing, unfortunately. Voice of Cards: The Forsaken Maiden. I enjoyed Voice of Cards: Forsaken Maiden more and less than the Isle Dragon Roars in certain places. It feels like an adventure, that you are basically venturing out and trying to, go on your adventure. But I like the overall story and kind of themes more. It definitely feels more of a Yoko Taro story than the Isle Dragon Roars, which felt more like just kind of your standard adventure with a little bit of Yoko Taro thrown in there. But it's a very fun game, and I got the platinum on it because I like the game. It was fun to play it, and I do hope that going forward Square actually announces these things better, if there is going to be more. I don't actually know if they're going to make more Voice of Cards, but honestly, I wouldn't mind getting a new Voice of Cards every 4 to 5 months between the games, because they're bite-sized enough that they don't take up a huge amount of time, but they're big enough that you can, have some fun and play around in. So, and I adore the battle system of it, where you can basically go all out without having to worry about having a fun time and doing the battles right. Resident Evil 8 Village Winter's Expansion. It's the only straight-up DLC on this list, but it was fun. It scared the shit out of me, to be perfectly honest, as I said in my expectations of an avid gamer, or rather it would be the finale, I believe, that the Bienvenido house again scared the shit out of me. Actually, even worse than the first time, which I didn't think that was going to be possible. So it definitely brought the scares. It made me very apprehensive to play. It just overall did a fantastic job at what it was going for. Everybody says this is the closure of the Winters story. I'm kind of hoping that's not the case. There's still a little bit open for Rose to either be the main character of the next game or to even have a part in the sequel. We're not sure yet, but I'm definitely looking forward to playing it, whenever that may be. Elden Ring was fun. I don't know if I so much like the open world aspect. I mean, there's parts of me that likes it, but the other part feels that for a Souls game, especially with so many things that you could miss, the open world part might be a little much. It's a very gorgeous open world, but at the same time, it also just feels like it's too open. Like, it took me probably double the time to beat Elden Ring as it took for any other Souls-like game. And honestly, I probably was severely underleveled for the final boss, because I feel like I was level, I don't know, 130 or something, and I think the recommended for the final boss is around 150, so I was probably severely underleveled for it. But, my little problem aside, I do think it's a very fun game. It's definitely one of the most challenging Souls games ever. I think that would I do a ranking for the Souls games, I would probably put Elden Ring below Dark Souls 1 and 3, or 1, 3, and Bloodborne, and above 2. Just for the sheer fact that while I really enjoyed it, it's not, to me, I don't know if it's as enjoyable the second time around. I haven't actually done my round 2 yet, but I will just have to kind of see how that goes for it. Number 2 is God of War Ragnarok. I actually was not finished with God of War 2018 by the time that Ragnarok came out. I did procrastinate on playing the rest of the games, and then once I finally got to 2018, I realized, holy shit, this game is good, and it consumed me. And then I beat it, I think, a couple of days after Ragnarok came out, so basically I had enough time to, beat it. I haven't done all the side content of 2018 yet, but I beat it just basically in time to play Ragnarok, and I had a blast with it. It hits so hard on the emotional stuff, man. It's so good. I was not expecting to like the newer God of War games as much, because I like the old games, but those are still kind of to me. Which, I said as much in my other Game of the Year video, but yeah, it was so good, and I just couldn't help but to be basically impressed at how well the games made me feel. Like, I straight up cried in certain points of the game that I will not spoil. And granted, I can be a bit of a crybaby, but for games, it seems like it takes a lot more for me to have that kind of emotional response. And with God of War 2018 and Ragnarok, it was super easy for them to do. it's probably because I have my own latent daddy issues, but these games hit it hard, and I don't know if they said that they were going to be done with the Norse trilogy after this, and I can see that they are done. I said Norse trilogy, the Norse set of games, but I am also hoping there's another one in the Norse set, because there is a certain plot point that I kind of am wanting to see followed up on. Maybe that will take place in a different pantheon, but I don't know. I can't wait to see more of it. And I can't wait to experience any more that God of War has to offer, because I'm in love. And say it with me, number 1 is Crisis Core Reunion. Now, should I have given my Game of the Year award to a remake? Well, that is perfectly up to me because it's my list. And I say yes. Honestly, had Crisis Core not come out this year, it would have most certainly gone to God of War. But, jeez, Crisis Core is a huge, huge, huge part of my formative years. You know, as a teenager, this game came out, in 2007, and, I didn't have a lot of games back then for me to play, so I basically got to get a few of them every year. And I didn't know a lot about Final Fantasy VII outside of Advent Children, because I hadn't played Final Fantasy VII at that point. I just knew some of the bigger plot points. And so I thought Crisis Core looked like a fun game. It's emotionally devastating, but it was fun. And honestly, I lost my shit whenever they announced that Crisis Core was being made for modern consoles and it was no longer going to be trapped on the PSP. The excitement is very, very much there. And as of this recording, I have not finished it. But by proxy of it being Crisis Core, it gets the top spot. There is no bit I've seen that has changed from the original, sans, the new voices and the voice acting on certain parts that weren't there before. But I can guarantee I will have this game completed before the video actually goes live. But I am fully sure that opinion will not change. Crisis Core will still be my number 1 game of this year, because it's kind of like Death Stranding. Any year that I play Crisis Core is a damn good year. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I really appreciate you guys being so understanding with my kind of weirdly off-the-cuff informal way of doing this. I know none of these are supposed to be like a big kind of review or anything like that, but I still want to try to have my thoughts a little bit organized. So next year, I had planned on writing a script for each section. So let me know what you guys think about that, if you like the more off-the-cuff ramblings, or if you would rather I speak with the script that doesn't sound like I'm doing a bunch of run-on sentences. But anyway, thank you so much for tuning in. This has been DEDMan's Game of the Year for 2022, and I definitely can't wait to make one next year. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful new year, and try not to die out there.